Greetings and welcome back, everyone. This is Into the Nexus, the podcast all about Heroes of the Storm. I'm Garrett, joined as always by Kyle, and also joined today by our special guest, McIntyre. Thanks for coming on the show, dude.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk some Heroes of the Storm with you guys today.
Yeah, Kyle and I have been batting around, like wanting to get you on the show for a while, and and then at some point, Kyle, you just like went off and asked him because I think 2 weeks ago you're like, oh, we've got Mac for this week. I'm like, oh, cool. It was awesome. Really glad to have you on, man. There's been a lot going on with Heroes lately, and it seems like even more going on with you and over on Heroes Hearth. You know, and we know that obviously they've tapped Kyle here a little bit to do some things over there, but you just seem to be just going constantly over there. How's Heroes and Heroes Hearth been treating you?
Yeah, it's definitely it's been pretty constant. I think we had this idea that we wanted to make a league for Heroes, and we were able to do that with our CCL league, which is the league where we call it the Celebrity Clash League, where we brought in a lot of streamers that played Heroes and we had them compete. Kyle was actually in that on one of the teams. And I think from there, we really noticed that people still really like Heroes. Like not only the players, but the community was really kind of banded behind the idea of it, behind the concept, and really seemed to enjoy the content that we had produced. So I guess from there, we figured, and kind of my role on the team is, how do we continue to press that content forward? And that's what we've been up to. Just kind of making sure we have the videos on YouTube, making sure our Twitch content continues to stay active. We just had a CCL show match last night. That was a ton of fun. As well as, we've even started now having in-house games every Monday where a bunch of like the top GM players are just kind of pick up basketballing games and we're casting over them. So it's been a lot of stuff, kind of leading the charge on that, but it's been a lot of fun and I'm having a good time. I think Heroes is still just so much fun to play, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's a funny thing, like seeing so many people kind of realize it again. Like obviously, Kyle and I are in kind of a unique position with this podcast because it never went away, and neither did our community. So to us, every now there were like there's these little beats. It's like almost this tempo of every like month and a half, a new kind of swath of people checking in with us. They come back around and go, "Hey, how's Heroes doing?" And our answer is always very well. And we get in the subject. I always get in the subject of like just frequent updates because I always ask like, "Hey, well, what games are you playing? How frequently are they updated?" Because we're still getting massive balance patches and reworks on top of a meta that is still constantly evolving. And I'm always surprised how surprised people are to hear that. Obviously, like the last really big surge was around Deathwing and that release. We were seeing, Heroes of the Storm popping up all over, not just fan sites that cater to Blizzard, but your usual, news outlets for video game news.
For sure.
But even since then, it's just been a lot of like I said, like, oh, yeah, it's doing really well, and then it's always fun just watching people's reactions of, wait, what, really? Like, how frequently are you getting updates? And I'm just like, look at these patch notes, look at those patch notes. It's nuts.
That was the craziest thing for me too. Was I'm even starting to recognize that, right? As I'm more digging back into Heroes, like the patches are pretty frequent, and while maybe not all the changes are massive, in our most recent one, we did have a big change in a character's core design. I mean, to see that happen, even after everyone had assumed that the game was on a downslope, right, it is exciting, and I think it kind of should bring energy back to the players to come back and give the game a try.
Sorry, I thought Kyle was going to say something.
Oh. No. You guys have been having a lovely conversation. I'm just ready to dive in and compliment and also reveal that McIntyre, you are fabulous at this game. You are a monster who has destroyed me multiple times, and it's lovely to have you on the show. My first interaction with you was I picked Johanna to block your Vala, and you basically hugged me the entire time because the blind is really thin at the front, so you just like stood like right to my left the entire game and destroyed me. And I was like, okay, well, he's a pro player and all that. It's gonna be a bit much. And then I fought your Li Ming, where you wave of forced me into your own magic missile aim while I was on Hanamura. And I was like, well, there's a reason why there's grandmasters in the world, and I'm happy to be in high diamond. All right, at least that was something. And this has continued to happen every time I fight you. So first of all, I have to reveal that I call you Wacky Mac just to try to like lower my fear of you in the game.
Okay.
All right, it's Wacky Mac on the enemy team. It's gonna be rough. We fought you the other day, actually. I think you were on Dahaka.
Mm-hmm.
And we did pretty well, but we lost.
And you went up against your.
It was a 5-stack. I remember the game. Yeah, that was the Dahaka pick was definitely necessary, though. Our team was a little wild that game, but the XP soak I think got us back in it. But
it was a game for sure.
And with that, I, of course, want to ask you, how's high-level play doing right now in the game?
Yeah, so, again, I've sort of now just started to realize that there is a lot of the top-level players that are still competing, right? We have that in-house matches that we're doing on Monday, but while those are casted, those games are running almost every single evening. And these players are, well, maybe not always queuing Storm League, are definitely still passionate and hungry for that top level competition. And they've now done something to make that possible for themselves. So as far as the top end goes, while it may not be what it once was, as, players were competing in an attempt to become pros and, live that pro gamer life. There's still competition in the game, and people are still after it and trying to still be the best when it comes to Heroes of the Storm. So I think it for sure still exists, and even now we're seeing kind of sparks with things that like Heroes Hearth are doing now, and just the players themselves are setting up for themselves to create that sort of competition again.
Do you feel like the customs are satisfactory? Or, basically, I'm asking in a very nice way.
Mm-hmm.
What should we do about the Smurf thing? And
okay.
Do you have any ideas? Clearly, it's not an auto win for anybody. In fact, I would say my games this week have been the best they've ever been because all heroes are free to play. So everyone's a Smurf. So the games are great. Like everybody's a Smurf, and the games have been fabulous all week long because of it.
Yeah, it's I think they've created some sort of system, right, with the master cap and the duos only. But also by doing that, I do believe that they have kind of created also a bubble where smurfing is almost more encouraged now, right? Instead of playing on your main that might be high GM, you're now playing on a lower diamond or platinum account to play with your friends. So that problem does exist, but it's not too bad as far as when you are grinding, right? If you're the top GM, I think that hunger is still there. It's hard because the player pool is the size that it is, right? They can take from the people that are playing, and like you said, now maybe with all the characters unlocked, people just are a little more gung-ho and just want to get out there and grind as much as possible. So we might see right now more of a healthy play than when those heroes aren't free, and again they're just kind of smurfing to try to rank up.
I didn't really think about that, actually, that not only is the free to play, which is going to happen no matter what sort of bonus they do or sale that they have, it's going to encourage more smurfing. But it's interesting that maybe the level of Smurf play was so good because they weren't restricted by their normal pool, which does seem to hit the trends of whatever's free for the week.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like when you would normally Smurf, you would play your one or two, and maybe now that they're able to play more the characters that they wouldn't have owned on that account normally. So
it seems like in general the custom thing is pretty healthy, though. Like people are inviting all their friends, having a big match, and yeah, they don't get any points for it at the end of the day, but they're in control.
Yeah, and they have to on that server they actually have an elo bot, so it's a self-made matchmaker. It's pretty, I don't want to say common, but if we look back, and I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with this, but back when I was 13, 14, I played a lot of Dota, and that was via Warcraft 3, right? And we had our Ventrilo servers that had bots, and those would usually generate the same sort of elo, and they're a clone of what is now pretty typical for games to have, right? Where you have a matchmaker, you take elos, you balance a game. So they're just taking that old system where you do it yourself and just applying it now to Heroes of the Storm. So they have a leaderboard that they're competing against each other. They just are only within their own, I guess, player base, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's also sorry. I'm thinking about how old I was when Dota was a thing, and it was not that young. But yeah,
I was a wee lad. Yeah.
Yeah, that's been kind of the revelation for me. When we talked right at the beginning about the revelation to folks that have kind of taken a break from Heroes and come back to realize that it's still healthy. Is for me as someone who hasn't left the game, is the realization that competitive play is still happening. I mean, it wasn't that long ago we just had Bahamut on the show, and he just so quickly rattled off all kinds of things that I just was not aware was happening in kind of the grassroots side of Heroes of the Storm competition, which frankly is just Heroes of the Storm competition now, because we don't have a Blizzard fronted competitive scene. So I'm curious, how has that whole experience been for you? Because you've now been on both sides of it. You've been a part of something that was very much a product of Blizzard Entertainment and driven by Blizzard's esports division, and now you're also on the other side of it, seeing grassroots competition in Heroes of the Storm. And also, I'm kind of curious your thoughts as to, because we got into this a little bit with Bahamut, which is depending on how long you've been into competitive video games, Kyle and I got started with all this stuff with StarCraft 2, which kind of had its own scene, which was somewhat a little bit tied into Blizzard, but not to what we saw with Heroes of the Storm. It almost seemed like Heroes didn't really have a chance to have its own grassroots build up before we got an official Blizzard tournament.
Yeah, I mean, so talking about first the Blizzard and now grassroots, I would say the biggest thing is that we now kind of have more control over it ourselves, right? That is both good and bad, as potentially the size of the pools of prizes might not be as big, or we might not have as much power within the client itself, right? As Blizzard did, and honestly didn't utilize it near as well as they could have. There are things that we can do now with grassroots that we couldn't then. Even last night we had our show match, and it was just wacky, tacky, relaxed, fun, competitive games, right? We had there was almost a point where I made them play the game, and they all were going to unbind their Z button, and no one was going to be allowed to mount, right? You would have never seen that, I don't believe, if HGC was hosting it, because why would they want to showcase the game being played the way that it's not supposed to be, right? So you have that angle. Obviously, it is a bit of a bummer, because at this point now, if you are playing the game, you're playing it because you love it. And maybe that's the beauty of what has spawned after the end of competitive Heroes via HGC, because before it was, and it felt at times even with players around me, that they were only playing for paychecks, right? They had maybe made it earlier or even later in the competition, and the only reason that they continued to compete was because it was paying the bills. It wasn't because they enjoyed the game. It was just solely to make money. And now we see the players that are still playing, they're playing this game because they love it. There's no desire for paychecks, and sure, making a couple bucks here or there. Competing is exciting and fun, but that's not what drives them. So I think those two things in comparison, now that I've kind of got to be on both sides, I've I guess, noticed. So it's cool, and it's more about the community, right? Whereas, without a community, you really can't have an esport. And we see now that we still have one of those. So it is possible to create competition from that community that I have. I guess, like, looking back at old Heroes and talking about, pre-HGC days. I mean, I was around then, right? Barrel Boys. We had things like Kings of the Storm. We had GO4s on the weekends. And, at the time, that was, again, similar to how it is now. It was very pure. We weren't playing for money. We were just playing to be good. And it was all about the, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the prestige, right? You wanted to be the best, not to make more money and to travel the world. It was just to say you're better than other players. And I guess we're going back to that now. It's not that, I'm this 7th place team. I'm making a paycheck. That's all I need to be doing. Instead, there's the hunger to be the best again.
Man, that is an interesting situation. It is so understandable because everybody does things for paychecks, or even I remember being in school at one point and being like, I'm doing this for a grade. I don't really care if I learn this kind of math. I just want to pass the damn class and move on with my life. Do you feel like there was a time period in maybe the meta where that was the strongest feeling? It seems like around and maybe after 2.0, there was a lot of pro players talking about how broken the game was or how it was unfun. And was that a result of that feeling?
I'm not entirely sure when that feeling arose for a lot of players. Maybe it was like when the meta was hyper mobile. That was like Genji era, right? It was like there was an obvious oppressive character type or play style that was doing well. And if you weren't playing it or banning it, you were essentially losing. And that was also at a time when I think drafting in general was just kind of toxic because there wasn't enough bans. That might have even been when like each team got a ban each, right? I think now we're getting 2, but before it was just 1 ban. It was a ban, and then we draft, ban, draft. And I think they added in the 2 bans. They played with the rule set, but I think that's when people started to lose a little bit of the passion. And then we came in and new players started to arise. And, again, that's something that I can even look at my own experiences and realize, whereas I was playing with people like BBJ and Ishbu and even Hami there towards BlizzCon, these were players that were not at the top level and only wanted to be, and they were able to achieve that, unlike players who had already been at the top and were just kind of trying to maintain.
A side question to that, how difficult is it in a pro situation to play a hero you don't like? And
yeah,
that's always been like the scary idea to me, is they're like, well, yeah, I love assassins, I want to play Li Ming all day, let's say, but you're tank now for the betterment of the team.
So it's a hard question. I think there's not really a right or wrong answer. You have to either decide if you're going to, like, especially with bans, I think bans are a really nice, easy way out. If you have them. So you can decide, like, we're going to ban this character and just not learn how to play it. A good example would be, we didn't ban the character, but I didn't play much of it, was Leoric. And a lot of people like to meme because I had a game where I died a lot as Leoric. I was getting passive value, but that game was mostly because we did have an Asmodan, and this is where my argument comes in. So I was more effective in my spectral form, slowing and giving vision for my team than I was alive, right? That was the idea. We would poke them out and then I'd spawn. I would hit a drain, spawn in, and then we'd engage off that. But regardless, there are characters and times when, like, you as a player just do not, you just don't match up with a character. And you can force it. And I think for me, what's frustrating from a pro player's point of view, if the pro player is not incentivized to do that, then I think that they're not passionate. And for me, that is like a weakness. That is something that no player who's trying to be the best should ever say or do. That's obviously different than the player who tries their hardest to learn a character and just isn't good at that character. In which case, there should be an adaptation made either via a draft, maybe you're banning the character, or you're having someone else on the team switch and play that character so that something else can happen. So it really comes down to, I think, a mindset from the players. So when, we have pro players who are just like, oh, I'm just not going to learn that character. Like, that to me is something that I would frown upon.
Not a fan.
Whereas if someone came to me and said, I can't play this character, I've practiced as hard as I can, and it's just not working, then something needs, then we need to make a play from there.
Do you have strong feelings towards like the two schools, which is either, one tricking or being flexible?
I mean, I think one tricking is a good thing that people should do. But you should be flexible if you can't play your one trick. I mean, look at, like, I played Heroes, and for a year plus, Zeratul was banned against me almost every single game, right? And you could argue that Zeratul was my one trick, but simultaneously, that entire time, I was getting Blaze, I was getting Yrel, I was getting Dahaka. So, like, am I a one trick in those characters? I think threatening a strong pick is almost an advantage in itself, because while you're presenting this one trick kind of personality, you're also just opening up more tricks to show off. So I don't think that there's a right or wrong. Through flexibility, you're able to play against or play with or play even certain characters. But again, if there's a character you're just not feeling, it's good to know the character, how it works, how to play against it, but you really don't have to play it.
This is all a cool angle, because Kyle, I don't think you and I ever really talk about playing something you don't like to play, because we talk so much about finding the fun in the game, and so that's obviously not a big thing that comes up, but it's something I know you and I have dealt with, obviously, just with our own rosters, just going into pickup games.
I don't know. I think I trash on Lucio often enough that I just don't want to play that doofy guy. And I do, particularly with all the Mal'Ganis I play, I definitely ban him out because I know what he can do. I just don't want to buzz around as a little flea and slap people backwards. It feels silly to me. It's not the fantasy I want to play as.
Yeah, and there's, I think for sure there's characters too, and like in Kyle's case where you just don't want to play against them. It's just annoying. It's obnoxious. Regardless of even if they're good or bad, it's just like, why not just get rid of them so that they just don't exist? And you see that sometimes. You would see that with even our games we casted last night. Every time that the team was drafting against Liam, who obviously has played a really good Yrel, they just banned Yrel every single game. They just don't want it to exist.
How did the wave clear affect him in the games? Is just keep banning Yrel? I
mean, yeah, so they keep banning Yrel, but again, going back to the point I was talking about before, that just opens up more tricks in your deck of cards. So it's like, I've never necessarily been a target ban type of drafter or player. I would much rather target and ban out a strategy than a player itself, because if you ban out a player, they're just going to play another character they're good at, right? Like, instead, you can ban out, maybe, in your case, you like playing Mal'Ganis. Well, if the other team doesn't have a Lucio one trick, that's fine. You'll just ban Lucio because now you've allowed your Mal'Ganis pick to be a bit stronger and have less of like that Nat running around and booping you back.
With the upcoming anomaly, which it may be in the works, it might also be here. Something weird happened this week. Basically, we went from 1 week of season left to 3 weeks of season left, which is understandable given the current climate and people working from home. Is there anything you would like to see? Would more bans be an anomaly to you, or do you feel like there's something else out there that needs visual clarity or working on?
As far as from like Blizzard's point of view, or just like players and games point of view?
Yeah, so like this last anomaly, XP became a mechanic. They worked that back a little bit, but we still got the visual indicator.
Yeah, so I think right now, the one thing that I think is hard to see for a lot of players, and this is older thing, was like that the fort XP. I actually really I understand where it comes from, because before, when you took a fort, you were just stronger, right? You just immediately became stronger. Like it allowed to break games open even harder, because you take fort 1, 2, 3, all of a sudden now you're 2 levels up, and now you have control of the map, right? Whereas now you have you take the forts. I think people just don't realize that once you have the fort, you're you guys are StarCraft players, and Cawthon used to be our coach, and I'm gonna botch the way that I explain this, but you now have a resource advantage, right? It's you have more gas or whatever, you're going to be you're farming more resources. It doesn't matter what you do on the map, right? It doesn't matter what you do. You can sit in your base. No, you can't. You have to soak the XP from the wave, but you're just going to scale stronger, right? The second that fort goes down, and people don't really abuse that, I feel like, in the game still, because the mechanic was introduced and it was never seen as publicly as during the time of HGC, where we saw the XP from forts kind of boosting the players. So
you think a lot of that is about the visual explanation of what is going on?
Exactly.
You think there's a lack of understanding of trickle XP because it's not explicitly shown in the game?
Yeah, it's like it's a passive thing that's happening, but like it's very hard for a player to realize visually, I guess, that it is happening, right? You can see your bars just a little bit more, but I think players recognizing that is a thing that is in effect is something that I do think people tend to make, like it'll be 15, same XP, but you have 3 forts down. Like, as long as you play the game out and just hang out, you're going to have 16 before them. That's just now how the game works. But people don't realize that, right? It's like, oh, well, I guess we should fight now, right? Like, they're going to hit 16 the same time as we are. That's not true. You will hit 16 before them, and you have that window, and you should know that timing to abuse it. You need to get an advantage from that level, or that talent to your advantage.
So would you like to see them make it more like some sort of interface?
I don't know how you would do it. Like there could be a number beside of your XP bars at the top, or some sort of visual indicator to let you know just like the rates at which you're now consuming experience passively. Like we think of like Warcraft 3, you build an expansion, and now you have 2 mains. I think they even show that at the top of your screen. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but now there are 2 bases, and thus you should be farming twice as much gold, right? They don't really, you just can't feel it, I guess.
Yeah,
is my complaint.
Yeah,
it does exist.
I feel like we still have a really big emphasis on the importance of keeps, which is understandable because you get constant catapults as opposed to periodic, but there's not as much weight given to just trying to be even or ahead on just structures in general, whether it's a fort or a keep, because of that trickle XP. How do you feel about the current XP orb anomaly? Obviously, they changed it around a little bit, but I mean that is an example we can look to of how they did now visually distinguish a mechanic of the game, which is soaking lane XP.
Yeah, I like the orbs, and like as a solo laner, like it does open up. Even as a mid 4 man, like it opened up opportunity on the map that wasn't there before. Because if the orbs are there, the other person has to walk up to them at least enough to get that like pull going towards them, and in which case that's time to damage them, right? That's time to start dueling or scrapping or poking, whatever the case is. Obviously this is more apparent in the solo lane in some cases, as solo laners nowadays are just pretty much juice cakes. Like they just don't take damage and sustain themselves. But you know, I have been playing like League of Legends, for example, and I know for me, gold is typically equal to health, right? In the sense of how much health do you lose to obtain a last hit or gold. And you should use that mechanic in your favor. If a minion on your wave is low, you know the enemy is going to have to last hit it somehow. Maybe it's a spell or maybe it's an auto attack, but you have that window to now deal damage to him, right? Or her, whatever the character is. And maybe that's through an auto attack or a spell yourself. So they're kind of introducing that mechanic a little bit to heroes. Obviously, there is a lot of pull on that. That I wish that vacuum was just a little weaker, so you could really abuse the mechanic. Because as is, that vacuum, you can kind of be near the XP, but you don't need to actually go to the XP. And why I think that's an issue is, as a like Hanzo, for example, you could just pull up your Stormbow and just be ready for them to walk on that globe, and then you immediately get guaranteed damage.
That's interesting, because I've been complaining about the fact that I can outrun the speed of the vacuum on if I'm on a mount or something.
Are you saying like you go up to grab the globe and then start walking away and it breaks?
Yeah, or like, all right, I cleared the lane, it's time to report to the objective, and I mount up and run away, and there's just one orb that's like, it's following me, and then if I'm not paying attention, you know, you actually don't end up getting it because you can outleash the thing.
So that mechanic, it's kind of there, right? Because as you mentioned here, right, there is, you have the ability to outrun the globes. It's just, you know, I look at a map like, and we can basically see this mechanic in play on Spider Queen, right? Like, you have to walk up to get the gems. They spawn and right on the spider wave, and they have to be picked up, or the other team loses them, right? It's more or less the same mechanic as the XP globes in my world. And on that map, characters like Zeratul are terrible, because that means the Zeratul has to walk up right to where the gems are at, and the other person then has a response. Whereas typically Zeratul can just, an off lane and a soul lane, especially prior to these XP globes, just stand there. Like, quite literally, the wave gets to the wall, you cleave it, and you reset it. So, you know, if we had a world where the tank has to step up, similar to Spider Queen, then maybe we have a world where we can outpoke and abuse those heroes when they do choose to step up to get the globes, rather than the way it is now, where they kind of just have to stand somewhere in the wave where they're already typically standing, and all of the experience will pull back to them.
Well, that's fair, and that's a mechanic we're used to with the health globes. And in the first place, now that we've added back in last hit, particularly with the poison characters, Jaina even, who is running off, couldn't we do that? Couldn't we say that if you're ranged, you have to last hit, and if you're a melee, and maybe the solo lane favors the melee, that's healthy and fine now?
Yeah, it would be, we've almost gotten to the point, right, where like we are last hitting. I feel like heroes would be very interesting, and I'll say this is, you know, maybe I'm wrong here. I think the relaxed state of the game via the globes kind of pulling to you is part of the charm of this game, right? I can sit and have a conversation with my mom on the phone while I'm soaking a lane, and I'm not completely stressed out because I'm making sure I get the experience, right? And in a game like League, you know, that's part of the toxicity of the game in itself, is like that mechanic existing, the fact that you're exponentially getting weaker than your opponent because, you know, you're missing last hits, which means you're down gold, and then they're getting all the last hits, and that means they're getting up gold, you know. So it's like the gap of strength between the two of you when comparing League to Heroes is like, it's just so much, it's such a different world, and that is probably why a lot of people do enjoy this game, is that world doesn't exist where you're so heavily punished, to the point that, like, you know, in League you can just quite literally be non-existent. You're just out of the game, even if you're playing your lane incorrectly, and within the first 2 minutes of the game. That's why FF15 is a meme, right? Because at 15 seconds you can quit the game because your first 2 or 3 minutes of the game went so poorly. So I like the globe. I like that they've like you said visualized for players that, again, similar to the forts, don't realize that is such a core mechanic of the game, and they've kind of brought it to light in a way of, hey, you see those little balls, you need those to make your team stronger.
Question about something you brought up. Should we be using the phrase juice cakes? And what is a juice cake?
It's just a very moist, thick, luscious cake.
Is Sonia juice cake then, or
yes, she's very juicy. Yeah,
Blaze,
incredible. Oof.
Is this in reference to their ability to soak
and just be thick? Yeah, just lots of health. They can just soak up XP. They can soak up damage.
What about something that shocked me in the CCL and I nearly died to multiple times? It was a solo lane Tychus.
Not as juicy.
Not as juicy, but did zone me out of the orbs and that kind of strategy you were talking about.
Yeah, so he would be fundamentally punishing you on that mechanic, right?
Yeah.
He's maybe juicy, but he's not as cakey because Taiki, yes, Taiki, yes, cakey. No, Tychus, he has no sustain. He has no sustain, right? That's going to be his biggest weakness in the solo lane. Like, all these other characters have some way to keep themselves healthy and full health and absorb damage, or maybe a passive armor here or there, or they just kind of have a mechanic that keeps them from dying. Whereas like a character like Tychus is very much so. It'd be like playing ADC in the offlane in League. You're there to abuse the fact that the person you're against is a melee character. They're gonna lack the ability to get on top of you in certain champion cases or hero cases, and you're gonna try to abuse that solely in the self that that as the game goes on, your position within it becomes a lot less weaker to the person you're playing against.
So it seems like we might have a balancing act that Blizzard's aware of, and the players are starting to understand that if we had that extreme last hit like Dota or League of Legends, the stress of the game would be so high, maybe for a shorter game, that we'd basically turn into StarCraft that people only want to play co-op Commander for.
Yeah, exactly. Or a game where we just want to play the first 15 minutes, and then depending on how well it's going for us, we either wait until the game's over, or even just run it down until the game. So whereas the world we live in now, in your case, if you're getting abused by a Tychus and maybe you're losing a couple globes, you're still scaling, right? You're still getting, your team is absorbing experience elsewhere on the map. They're doing camps. They're maybe taking forts that are passively repairing that experience that you've lost, and you'll eventually get to a point where you'll either rotate or maybe power spike to beat the Tychus yourself, and kind of deal with them that way. So I think that in itself is why this game is so healthy and fun to play.
Before we get into the balance of now and the patch 2 weeks ago and all it's brought to the game, you've been making a lot of guides. Is there any strong opinions you have that people need to understand about the core gameplay or certain heroes?
I would say that I think that people are not playing ETC correctly. Actually, if I had to say a character, I think I see ETC players playing him incorrectly, and I also see people not taking ETC in the offlane enough.
Okay, you have my attention.
I think he's incredibly busted in the offlane, equivalent to Dahaka at times, just because of stage dive. I also think Mosh Pit is maybe one of the most bait heroics in the game. There are fights where you just see ETC never even use it, even though he has it, because he knows that it is impossible, or if he does use it, he's just gonna overextend himself into dying anyways, right? Like, sure, you're looking for like the hero play, the biggest mosh pit of your career, and wowie, but half the time you hit that, the other team just dances for you because there's no damage around. It doesn't do anything other than make them dance, you know? So like, I think mosh pit on ETC is terrible. And if you take mosh pit, I'm sorry, but I'm just saying it. I just think it's a bad talent. It's a humongous CD. It's a 2-minute CD. Channel time is really long. And at this point, people take stuff that deals with it, right? There are worlds where potentially you're mosh pitting and they don't have a response, and you just destroyed them. But you can land on them with stage dive, and we destroy them the exact same. And you can do that from the soul lane. You can do that from your base. You can actually team fight. A lot of the time I use ETC is I'll team fight. Chunk will reset. I'll legitimately hit recall, go back to the base. I'm full health, full mana, and then I just jump back in, right? Continue the fight full health now. You've reset completely and you've come back in. So that's my first hot take as far as ETC goes. My second.
Wait. Let's pause right there.
Okay.
So is this a level 1 off lane ETC?
What do you mean by that?
Is it all about like stage dive, maybe even echo pedal, or can we do ETC? You're saying we can do ETC level 1. Sonya, go do camps. I've got this lane.
I mean, I'm saying like you spawn into the game and you have like a main tank garage with ETC in the offlane. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Is it echo pedal that's doing this, or is there another strategy going on there?
Well, echo pedal doesn't come online until later in the game. I think that's
so echo pedal is good. Echo pedal is actually probably what I take 50% of the time. So okay, I'm not sure if you guys have the abilities up. Maybe you do.
I'm looking at his stats,
and I can describe it to the viewers right here now, verbally. But you know, at level 1 for me, what makes ETC so insane in this whole lane is Guitar Hero. I'm not sure why. I know Prog is so Prog rock. You can sustain your allies, and sure, it's great for that. But Guitar Hero essentially makes ETC full health all the time. You hit your E, and then all the damage that ETC does, 60% of it is healed back to him, right? And basic attacks increase the duration of guitar solo, which is your passive, right? Which is your E.
Trait.
So the longer you auto attack, the more you're regenerating 66 health per second for 4 seconds, right? So not only are you getting that regeneration, but you're also healing every time you auto attack. And so that's where things like at level 4, that's where I start to go things like speed metal, which is another questionable. A lot of people would be weirded out by this one, but
using a basic or heroic ability also gives nearby allied heroes 20% movement speed for 2 seconds.
So now you have Lucio passive pretty much constantly, because you're going to be smacking your E and you're going to be walking up and auto attacking.
Yourself. So
yes.
you're more focused on that as I can stay connected for auto attacks.
You're right. So because my second hot take, and we'll talk about it here in a second, but the reason that that's so powerful is because that is going to allow us to save our other buttons for more important things, right? Our E is just a button you can just keep smashing it, right? And that's where we open up into our level 7, where we get, echo pedal. Whereas if we use a basic or a heroic ability, we get pulses of damage, which is great for splitting, but what's really good for healing yourself is hammer on. So this is another one where people are a little more curious. I feel like hammer on with this build, you're going to walk up as ETC E and just smack the heck out of them. Like you're just beating them down, and anything that they do, Leoric's, Dahakas, like it doesn't matter. Like you can get drained by Leoric and you trade up because you're sustaining so much. You're getting that 25 armor every time you hit your E. You're holding on to what, in my opinion, is your heroic ability, which is Power Slide. And that's like my second hot take on ETC. It's always been that way. But Power Slide is ETC's heroic. Like, this is the ability that makes him strong. It is his blessed shield. It is his it's how he makes opportunity happen. So to be able to save that, via stage diving in, right? When we stage dive into, we get hammer on. Or no, we don't get hammer on. Sorry, we get movement speed. That then, we can use our E. Now we have more movement speed. We get our hammer on auto attacks in. And this entire time, we're hoarding away our Power Slide either to slide in to guarantee kills or to slide out and get yourself out of danger. So it's like the button that you use last, right? You want to use your W to disperse, or maybe knock people in, or keep them in your auto range even at times. But you really want to hold on to that Power Slide for the window where, hey, this is going to really chunk them out and I'm going to walk away, or hey, if I slide in here, we'll get a kill. He's just, dude, this character is so cool. But I just don't think anyone really plays him like this. And I do. And I feel like, I could check my Storm League even. I feel like I'd never have lost a game as him playing this way.
Well, as someone who really likes solo laning, and ETC is like my go-to if I need to tank, but I don't take him in the solo lane. I'm excited to take your last 10 minutes and do something with it. That's really rad.
Yeah. And it, obviously it scales too, right? We have aggressive shredding at 16, which is reduced every time you auto attack, you reduce the cooldown of your guitar solo, which is your E. So you can continue to E more often.
Yeah, or every talent you've been talking about so far is underpicked, looking at something like Hot Slogs, but has a positive win rate.
Really?
When you look at when you look at the win percentage, a lot of them were actually pretty damn close. Like Guitar Hero and Prog Rock are within a point percentage of each other. Speed Metal and Loudspeakers as well. I'm comparing what you're picking to like the popular pick. Like Loudspeakers beats out Speed Metal by an insane amount in the pick rate, but their win rates are very close. So it's really interesting. Like the big one is obviously the heroic. Mosh Pit is just running away with popular pick rate.
And that right there just kills me to know, because I get it. It's like, yeah, again, you hit that massive mosh pit, but like half the time you're too afraid to cast it, or you cast it and everyone's dead already, or it's as a card player would say, like, it's a win more card, right? Like, it's, if you hit a big stage dive, you're gonna smash them anyways, and it's more consistent. It allows you to split. It allows you to, like I said, recall and jump back in. And it also saves your Power Slide, which is my most crucial point to that statement. Is with Mosh Pit, you require power sliding in and then moshing. And so if anything goes wrong, that's when you see those ETCs and everyone's like, kill him, he's got nothing, right? You stranded yourself for something that works 20% of the time.
Makes a lot of sense. It's the one thing I have been doing is I've been going stage dive way more. Okay. But yeah, I've literally got like the notepad out. I'm like taking notes right now, dude.
I was aware of like the increase on your healing on guitar solo, but I never really noticed the synergy of heal for 60% of the damage you deal through basic attacks, and how Hammer On empowers that in the first place.
So like every auto you're hitting for like, here I can just jump it. I'll jump into try mode here to kind of, I think at like level 7, when you get the talent, I'll go to 7 here and just see what that crit's worth. But it's mostly just like the fact that you get, every time you hit E, right, you get the speed metal. So you just zoom up on them. There's nothing they can do about it. And then you auto them for 182. So you're healing for 120 with a 66 regen per second. So, you're sustaining 200 health every auto attack.
Jeez.
Basically just like, you just ignore anything that happens to you while simultaneously beating them down for 82 in auto.
So while you're revealing secret ETC talents, is there anything behind Showstopper at 16 that I don't understand? Because that thing just looks sad.
Showstopper. So
that's
you're saying
armor,
the slide armor?
Yeah,
you're saying what's good about it, or
Well, it's just 10 more armor than we normally get, right?
Yes,
for casting any spell.
This is a trap talent, right? It's especially now that they've added the armor's no longer stack. It's just not good.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's no secret, and again, this just goes against everything that I was just talking on with the fact that, you know, when you slide, it's to kill someone or to get away, right? You're never really sliding and saying, "Hey, hit me," you know. Compared to something like a Muradin who's jumping in and saying, "Hey, do you guys want to hit me?" You know, like, it makes more sense. With ETC, you're sliding in. You don't really want them to hit. You want to slide in, maybe knock a couple people back and run the other way, you know? And obviously, yeah, you're already getting 25 armor just pressing buttons. So this is for sure a bait talent. Not something that I would recommend anyone. And yeah.
So you like cool. Aggressive shredding there?
Yeah, I mean, imposing is good though. Like, it's crazy that people, this is another talent that I think people just sleep on, like on things like Joanna even. Like, this talent is really strong.
And it has a passive on it too. Like, you're going to get
exactly.
You're going to get value by doing nothing just by selecting this talent.
And it messes people up. Like, I know for me, when I play Vala and, you know, I have my rhythm going, you know, I got my 8, I'm tapping away. I know the rhythm. And then you shoot somebody with imposing, and now you're canceling an auto attack because you're auto attacking too quickly, right? Your attack speed's gotten slowed a little bit, and that rhythm kind of gets a little messed up. The way I like to use it is as just as another button for ETC. Imagine if ETC had a button where you can just walk up to somebody and then you have a button that just slows everyone around you, right? This is a great way to do that. It gives you the ability to slow and then use that speed metal to get around them and then W them back. And continue to, you just hold on to that slide until you really need it.
Well, rad. Well, thank you for sharing, McIntyre. This has been a fascinating little ETC power session. I dig it. Well, rad. Well, let's just kind of keep the build train going and take a look at the meta in this week's news section. Before we do that, I do want to shout out and give a thanks to our patrons supporting us over at patreon.com/ITN. We really appreciate the support, everyone. We got all kinds of perks for you over there. Ad-free feed, access to the Discord, and also signups for our patron games that we do once a month for our patron bonanzas. Had a lot of fun last week, by the way, when we did ours for this month. And we also want to thank some of our most recent patrons. So thank you to Odin Films, Robert Russell, and Obake. Thank you very much for the support. So go check it out. If you like this podcast, you want to support us, check us out over at patreon.com/ITN. Go give it a look. Thanks again. And now let's move into this week's Heroes of the Storm news.
We're on, boys! Ha-ha! Let's liven up this place!
Point me to the stage.
Stay a while and listen.
So, Kyle, as you mentioned, we've had 2 full weeks now since the last balance patch. It was a little volatile looking at things last week. Plus, we were still looking at statistics from Zul being bugged. But it doesn't really seem to have mattered. Zul's win rate is still exceptionally high. I'm going to go ahead and just grab the last 2 weeks. We're looking on Hot Slogs if anyone wants to follow along at home. Grab last 7 days and then the week before that, so we get 2 weeks worth of statistics here. Games, first of all, just games played on Zul is insane. Games banned is even more insane. There's a lot to look at on Zul, but still sitting at just shy of a 65% win rate with the statistics available to us. You know, as always, takes it with a grain of salt. It's not perfect stats. It's just people who are running the uploader. But I don't have over 2,000 games logged with Zul, so I like to look at these things.
That's fair. We certainly know he's powerful, and everyone's playing draft games. Oh, make them do the Deathwing ban, and then maybe Zul will get through. We're first pick, don't ban Zul. We'll go for it. McIntyre, he's up 14% to basically 65% win rate total. Is he broken?
Yeah, I think so. In a weird way too, because he before was I would say a little sad, right? Not being able to scythe his way into having the skeleton spawn. But I want to say that mechanic isn't even what's making him broken right now. It's actually his talents. I think they've just introduced some talents back to the character or even some newer ones that really pushed him, right? And I'm sure we can look at win rates here to kind of see which talents are working and which aren't. But I would say that overall, I think I really like the way that they've made the character, capable of existing outside of the lane, right? But yeah, I think they really pushed some talents a little too far, and that's what's skewing these numbers and making it harder for people to deal with him as the game goes on.
Well, the really interesting thing when we look at talents is that they're all in the green. It's just that some are really in the green in terms of what's going on. I'm the biggest surprise for me is when I look at actual like win rates per talent level for Zool is that the scythe build is not the one that's just absolutely running away. It's still at a healthy win rate, but it's lower than going hardcore into skeleton spawning, which surprises me. It's my favorite way to play. I think it's the most fun, but I feel significantly more effective when I'm putting when I'm doing a scythe build.
Yeah, I would say if I had to go and pick out just from memory here, the talents that I would assume are doing really well, it's the moving the mark from 16 to 13 and the slow on scythe, right, at 16 now. So before Zool was hitting that power spike at 16 where he was rooting and then he would mark, right? And now we have synergy with his own kit on that mechanic. It's coming on earlier at level 13. And not only does it come online, spawn more skeletons and stuff, but we're also permanently slowing you once we do that. And that is all fairly easy to do. And easy is usually the key word when it comes to win rates, because you look at a character like Genji, and forever and always, sure, he was obnoxious when someone played him really well, but his win rate continued to kind of be somewhere in the middle. Whereas we have a character like Zool now, where it's literally says, hey, if you push E, you're going to do half of someone's health, permanently slow them, and then just spam everything else, and you'll probably kill the rest of the team.
So the counterplay opportunity is limited. A lot of people are saying, well, Zool was always great in the solo lane. Now you gave him too much team fight. He can't have both. But that makes a delightful character that I think we all want to keep playing.
Mm-hmm.
Do we just lower his health? Do we learn how to draft? Where do you put the energy?
He's interesting because I think if, again, that root mechanic isn't so oppressive for the team, you can just run him over, really, right? Because he has no mobility. He's not very good versus poke. And yeah, characters like I would say like Arthas and kind of the move towards you and what are you going to do about it are maybe the answer, but it's so hard even for me to kind of decide that, as I personally don't have enough games against this new Zool. That's always been his issue, though, is that he doesn't have mobility. He doesn't deal with high mobility very well. And he is kind of a one trick in the sense of you push your E and then either no response happens and the person just gets blown to oblivion, or he pushes his E and then your team says, oh, there's a Zool, by the way, we should try to take him out. And then that I could keep talking, but yeah, it's like I saw Team 12 used to run Zool a lot, but they would run double support. And then how do you kill him? And now maybe that's exactly what we're seeing now, where if he has people behind him protecting him, what do you actually do?
So would it be a nerf then, and a decent nerf, to just make Bone Prison instant or shorter?
I don't know if it's actually Bone Prison in itself. It's mostly Bone Prison with the fact that we're now amping and we're spawning, right? So it used to be you would get Bone Prison, but then you wouldn't take that much damage. you would only take the damage from the team behind the Zul. Now Zul is just legit pushing E on you, and you just said something about Zul soloing. If you take Jailers at 4 now, he can just push E on you, guarantees a scythe hit, which is gonna guarantee spawn 3 skeletons, and they're gonna all punch you out, right? And then obviously when that quest completes, then they start punching even harder or faster, something like that. So it's just like, what's the counterplay to that, other than play Sonya or ETC? Maybe ETC's
they gain movement and attack speed 40% when you complete that quest.
So again, like, how simple is that to do, right? You push E, you wait a half second, you push your Q on them, you spawn 3 skeletons, they punch them out, you reset, and then you take the Triggles at 7, you get some mana, you get some health back. Azul, rinse, repeat.
Yeah. But my focus has been on, like, you talk about him not having mobility, which is true, but he starts with bone armor, like, to have kind of a little bit of a save, if you do get caught out, and the gank wasn't perfect. To me, that's where my focus kind of goes, is like, there's so many heroes that have that same weakness that Zul has, but they don't have an escape, and they sure as hell don't have a shield that you start the game with.
Yeah, that honestly maybe could be the problem, right? The fact that he has a shield and all the new bells and whistles that they've given to him.
Yeah, I mean, you've always referred to Johanna, Kyle, as having the kitchen sink of like, well, she just kind of has everything you want on a hero. That it kind of feels like Zul has gotten to that point.
Yeah, over time we've realized that Johanna's limited by her level 10, so at least she doesn't have the direct stun until later. Man, Stukov's a great example of it too. Like, the heroic, ever since he came out, kind of feels like the silent zone. And yet, so we have massive shove and flail about, and we're like, well, those are kind of nice every once in a while. Sure, why not? But you start with your heroic. Maybe Zul needs that same idea. Maybe the shield is the 10.
Yeah, the shield could be the 10. They could. I was gonna say maybe even no, because the way his core works, I would say, his E is really strong too, but what else would you put there? Maybe you could switch skeletal mages with his E ability, but then you lose out on all those fun talents that they've generated with Jailers and stuff. But yeah, I would say maybe moving the shield to 10, you get either the tankiness or the slow or damage, whatever the case is.
Yeah,
instead of just having it all, right? You kind of get it all, and you get. And even looking at the level 1s, you get the backlash, you get percent health, like, you get a slow, you get dodge, right? If you really need to dodge some auto attacks, you can take shade at level 1. So,
and are we basically 16 is Decrepify? That is the go-to here.
It's just, it's so strong. Obviously, Weaken is really powerful too. You really can't be upset at Shrink Ring, and Shrink Ring on skeletons, right? They're gonna spawn, like, it's going to happen. I think it's one of those things that's definitely a tech talent, right? It's not a for sure, but I do know that Decrepify is. Hey, man, it's there's a reason they got rid of it, right?
Yeah.
It was a talent that existed that they removed. They were like, this is not cool on this character. And now they're like, hey, by the way, we're going to make it so the scythe spawn skeletons, and it's cool now. Don't worry. The skeletons also deal more damage, by the way. But it's okay.
So you mentioned Sonya as kind of a counter pick, because she can break her own roots and she maybe heals off skeletons?
She just doesn't care about Zul. Yeah, Sonya's disgusting into Zul. He really has zero interaction to her. Not only does she sustain off of his skeletons, right? She can break the roots. She can also not take the root break and just take Wrath at level 10, and just kind of stand there and wait half a second and then break out, right? And all of her damage is through spells for the most part. So Zul does slow auto attacks, but Sonya doesn't really auto attack, right? So that's the other thing about Sonya that is really good into Zul is the fact that unlike some other top laners, she doesn't really have to auto, similar to, you know, maybe Uriel, who has to kind of weave in those autos every once in a while.
Oh yeah, and if you like take Shot of Fury at 4, you're really not very concerned about
At
no,
all.
I'm rage starved because my battle or my
And the
basic attacks
skeletons are
slow.
generating Fury too for
Yeah.
you that whole time. It's like, sign me up.
Yeah, I've been having a little bit of fun. It's kind of some weird fun I've been finding this week is Sonyaing into Zul's. You're also generating more healing off of the damn skeletons that are getting whacked by your whirlwind. So it's just
you pretty much just run Zul over. Like if we're being honest, like Sonya just runs Zul over. So if you're listening now and you're having a problem with Zul, just take Sonya and like you'll feel like you're playing Animal Crossing. It's lovely. You know,
I feel like that's a little disingenuous.
you're just kind of hanging out and the carefree. The Zul's the guy from Warcraft, the Warcraft episode of South Park, really, you know, set back in his chair, kind of just trying his hardest, and you're just, you know, cutting down trees and fishing. Like it's completely two different worlds.
I've seen spiders. There's spiders that chase you or something like that.
Yeah, that does happen. Yeah, but
That's
almost two different complete worlds where and usually win.
No one's picking a zebra right now, Kyle. You're fine. Don't worry.
Good point.
Don't
Good point
worry
with the
about it.
spiders.
Don't have to worry about those spiders. It's totally okay. All right.
I mean, this win rate is coming from somewhere because he is taking away from Dahaka, Sonya, but you know, maybe with experience. Leoric, Thrall, Artanis, Malthael, just about every solo laner is down right now.
That's crazy.
But Rexar's up.
Rexar is up. It's like the world wanted to prove my belly aching about Misha being easier to kill wrong. Like it's Rexar's doing fine. But like I don't know. Like he still clears lanes really quick depending on how you build him. I don't think there's like an inherent upside to Zul other than, you know, you don't need to get Rexar so close to him that you're in range of bone prisoning, right? If your Rexar is getting bone prisoned, that's kind of on you. You have a lot of control over that. But like you're still going to be spawning skeletons on your butt. So
right, the community conversation here is stalling because much like Li Ming release, we're all sitting around going, well, I mean, I'm having fun and you all need to learn how to counterplay, right? No, the character's probably actually too powerful, but there's so many counterplay options as well. We talked about Sonya here. We talked about Poke just in general, like spreading out and being on different angles and not all getting hit by a blue build, but it all adds up. And certainly we're talking about all leagues here when we say up 15%.
Yeah.
I wonder, is there a way for us to check who's got the best matchup?
Against Zul? Yeah.
I actually just found it here.
I can go and win percentages against. We also go games played against, so we actually get like high amounts. This is kind of on the low end, so I wouldn't take this.
Well, I mean, we're seeing things like Kale Foss. Stitch is a little interesting. Huh.
Stitches would be pretty good versus him in the sense of you're going to pull him into you, right? And then he's now stranded, and now he can get focused. So I can see that. I'm looking at some win rates here. Hanzo, right? That's kind of that poke. Greymane is another one that goes back to the run him over sort of strategy, right? Where we're just gonna brute force over top of him. Tracer is another one that like he's gonna have little to no interaction against. Just being able to bounce around him, and if she does get prisoned, then you can just recall it anyways. Or just
Lily
run him
makes
over,
sense.
right?
You got a nice blind on your Lily. Maybe dodge a lot of that curse strike in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Trace. Funny enough, Trace is in the top 5 for win rates overall. So that makes sense.
Whereas like the lumbering, clumpy, low damage, I'm looking down at the bottom now. We have things like Uther, Kiera, Cassia, Rhaegar is pretty terrible. Thrall. Interesting that Arthas might not be good, but I still feel like with Icebound Fortitude, maybe he's not that good because you kind of just get all of your zombies cleaved down.
Yeah, and I was thinking about Cassie. I'm like, well, there's a blind. What are we doing here? But you stop her from moving, and there goes the trait, and that's half a Cassia.
Yeah.
Interesting. Li Ming is also really low in 40%, but that makes sense because you got skeletons now, and orbs are hitting skeletons. And,
yeah. That's always been an issue if you're a Li Ming player, any type of ad spawning.
I actually have a off-topic question about Li Ming here, McIntyre. Li Ming, Lunara, on the same team, Hanamura.
Okay.
Where did it come from? It's amazing. Was there some video or something I missed?
With Li Ming and Lunara on Hanamura?
Yeah, like same team. I see it over and over again.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand Li Ming on Hanamura. Actually, you could argue that it's like maybe one of her best maps because there are a lot of like little bridges and places she can blink around, right? And poke, similar to like I would say BOE. It's a pretty good map for Li Ming as well, right? But the Lunara pick, if I had to guess, I would assume that it has to do with the Wisp power. Because the map is so small, having vision on a map like that just gives you all sorts of information, whether it be to get ahead of the enemy to kind of find a pick, or to know what they're doing so you can go and take a fort. I don't know. I personally haven't uploaded or seen any videos that have those two as a duo together. Maybe they're just flavor of the month. I know Lunar is pretty flavor of the month right now as far as ranged goes. People really like playing her.
It's been my pet project. Yeah.
And we also see Maiev up an insane amount this week.
What?
Yeah.
That is my personal just annoyance hero. When we were talking earlier about heroes you just want to ban because you don't want to deal with them, Maiev is at like the tip top of my list.
It could be because of Zul too.
Sure.
Like,
I know I've had my reaction. I've been slam picking Zul'jin because I love guillotining bone prisons.
Gotcha. Yeah. It could be that. It could be. I mean, it could be the fact that you can use your passive to evade the bone prison too, right? I think that as a counter mechanic to that ability. And again, Zul's terrible with mobility, so like if you ward and cage him, he can fight to the death, right? And that's typically what he does, but he's not going anywhere. So that could be it too. I'm not sure.
It's interesting.
We could also say that Medivh shot up 7% this week, and that might be due to Zul as well.
Yeah. Just keep. I'm looking at. I see Kerrigan here too. She's pretty high win rate. 57.
Kerrigan's been really high for a long time now. And I've never been able to really pinpoint why, because I feel like it's been a while since we've seen dive comps be popular. But the other thing with Kerrigan is that her games played are very low and have historically been. So it's like you've got these kind of specialists. I mean, it's right up there with like it's Probius isn't as high as he used to be, but Probius has always been one of those where if you do and you go look at sites like Hotlogs or Heroes Profile where you're looking at uploader stats, Probius is always higher than you would think he would be, but it's always like double-digit games over multiple weeks.
Gotcha.
Because you've just got these specialist players out there that are just gods with these heroes, and but they're not popular. Whereas that's why Zul is like on top of being the popular
thousands of games played and still 65% win rate.
Yeah, exactly. And you can go and compare that to something like Johanna, where over 2 weeks we're looking at over 3,000 game played, almost 3,000 games banned. And sitting at a healthy 53% win rate. So that's where I start to actually trust the stats significantly more because there's a lot of games played. But you look at someone with Kerrigan who over 2 weeks have just shy of 300 games played and sitting at a 58% win rate. It's like, there's just some Kerrigan specialists out there. I'm surprised to see Rexar was so few games played. He's been on top for so long. I figured he would have taken, been more popular. But again, we're also looking at Zul who if Zul's up for grabs, you're going to just pick him instead of Rexar. Why control two heroes when you can play one and just own? So doesn't surprise me.
You got me hungry for some Kerrigan gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, the chat was going on about your Kerrigan play of the past.
Yeah. That is I mean, if you go to my Liquipedia page, that is my signature character on that heroes page. I mean, that was like, I mean, if I look at my profile on my main account right here, go to statistics, we'll go to lifetime games played as Kerrigan. I have an 80% win rate as her. So
Nice.
out of 200 games. So yeah, she's like, I was very happy with the way that, and this is like a good memory, right? I'll go touch back on the HEC a little bit here, but I got to play Kerrigan against a Korean team during BlizzCon and smash them. And it's like the fact that I got to play her in a competitive game that meant something and do well is like is now just a good moment in memory for me.
That's badass.
Yeah, like, and so yeah, she definitely has a soft spot in my heart.
Is there anything like stopping you in the current landscape from just getting back in on Kerrigan?
It's just one of those characters that like, I mean, I'm even looking now at my just recent games. Like I still play her, and I mean, I have 4 games on my total match history. They're all wins as her. It's not like I don't like playing her. It's just I've always been in hero. Like in heroes, I've always loved just playing everything. So while there are characters that like I could probably play Kerrigan over and over and over and over and probably be one of those 67% win raters, it's just it's not going to bring as much enjoyment to me as, you know, losing a game on Hanzo really quick and then going back to Kerrigan. You know, like
Yeah,
it's not gonna stop me.
I get you.
Makes a lot of sense.
Any opinions on the new kid in town? It seems Mephisto, the not really watching the draft and I'm going to pick him anyway kind of hero, but seems to be doing well and climbing slowly.
Yeah, he's just big damage. And he's one of those characters that if you get frustrated with him, he's going to punish you too, right? His design is frustrating in the sense that, you know, he'll blink in and deal some damage, and then most people are like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to go after him now and I'll just get him on the other side. But then now he's gotten enough damage in that he's blinking the other way, but then you're chasing after him because you're so frustrated that he's hitting enough of his W again that, you know, by the time he blinks, you know, it's like, I think he does a lot of damage, but he's one of those characters that people don't have enough time against. And thus he's really excelling, right? Especially for those players that are spamming games and becoming masters of him and really abusing the fact that his kit does big boy damage. And I think like they may have even changed the talent. I think it was static field at 16. I know it's big. Maybe that was the one they changed, but it's like % health damage on W, and he casts W a lot, right?
So you're kind of getting into like an X factor there, where you're saying like he is effective in his own right, but also the wider community just don't have experience playing against him.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a little bit of both. Like the character is effective. However, I think his effectiveness is just boosted by the fact that no one really, you know, you see him every once in a while. Like Kyle said, like you're hanging out and now they have Mephisto. Like I guess we're gonna play against this, right?
Well, it's a good flex to have if you're trying to fill that mage slot as well, because like the two most popular, your Janas and your Kael'thas's, are contested and sometimes even banned.
Mm-hmm.
So it's another also like good trick up your sleeve to be like, oh well, my Kael'thas got picked, so let's go do this. But the thing is like the skill set doesn't translate over at all. So you need to put time into Mephisto to be effective. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is one of those heroes you do not want me on because I'm just crap with Mephisto. I do not understand how to make him go. No, it's just it's on the rough side for sure. Kyle, was there anything else that kind of stuck out to you in the last 2 weeks since the patch? Because we got a lot of buffs, and a lot of the heroes that got buffed are actually down. But I always take that with a grain of salt because I assume that, they're buffed. People are now interested in playing them, and they haven't played them in a while. So now there's more games getting logged with people who are a little rusty, or maybe it's their first time on these heroes.
Right. Stukov just feels really punished in our current style we play in. It's been a while since I've really wanted to be a Stukov. I feel like Malfurion's doing his job when you got to heal multiple people in the right environment. Sammy's down, and Sammy got bug fixed, and those bugs were being exploited. I think just because Sammys are very buggy players.
What do you mean by that? The type of people that are happy to really wring all of the bug out of the sponge?
Right, like literally coming from Warcraft 3, Sammy players defined the orc meta because they were just frustrating and crazy people. And when Sammy entered Here's the Storm, those same players went, here's my chance to be frustrating and crazy.
They figured out that if they slash dance and then split, the clones are all dancing while walking. And then they can use that to throw off people, to then blink to those clones that are dance walking and then hit you for 1600 damage. And then what's it called? The blink away on Windwalk, and just you're like, what the hell just happened? I don't even.
Right, and it could be worse than like that. You could have to like hit B twice and then Hearth in the middle of it, and all Sammy players would do it because they have a secret Discord somewhere where they only share bugs with each other, and there's this hive mind thing going on there.
Yeah,
go for it.
I actually have personal experience, so it's funny that you say that because there was a time during HEC where I was on stream spamming games of Samurai because at the time we thought the character was really good, and then all of a sudden like 2-3 Samurai one tricks were in my chat and like had me join a Discord. And this is a real thing that happened. I'm not even, I wish I was exaggerating, where they then were teaching me all of these Samurai bugs in one and ways to exploit the character to be more effective.
Oh my God, this is
exactly how you were. And I wish I was joking. Yeah. Like all the there's so much depth to that character that I was just, we revert back to the, do you play characters that are good and get good at them? Like this was one of those characters where I was like, nay, like I'm just not. I will not sit here and have, 200-300 APM doing all. It was like playing a fighting game. I'm telling you, the combination of keystrokes on frame windows to get things to happen, and they were explaining this stuff to me, and I was like, this is actually insane.
That's nutty.
And it's all on Samurai, yeah.
Right. Bind your heroic to your middle mouse button, and when you scroll, you're gonna activate it. Like it's all
exactly. You are not wrong. Those are the things. Yeah, they were like, make sure that your dance emoji is on your G, so that when you taunt, when you hit split, you actually lose a frame. And yeah, it's like, what? How are you guys figuring this stuff out? What are you doing?
Oh my God. Oh, geez. Have you talked about this elsewhere? Because like I wonder if you're gonna get like a DM after this. Someone on the team's gonna be like, "Yo,
this was about a year and a half ago." So
that's insane. That is like, it's like some like. I listened to another podcast called Darknet Diaries. This is like one of those stories where this is entire episodes dedicated to exploits in games that like went too far. That's wild. Jeez.
He'd be the big one that is very much affected by his bug updates. Diablo went up, which is pretty exciting, and I love, Diablo with a bit of damage. And Butcher is up a little bit right now. Maybe follow-up Stun to Zool. That's an interesting one. Anytime you add a character with lots of lane clear, people like Sylvanas and Butcher start to take off a little bit because they're good alongside more lane clear.
Yeah, I'm not really... they didn't change Butcher at all, did they?
He was able to turn off his charge sooner. So if you made a bad charge, and you
shaved
said,
half a second off, if I remember.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a 2% increase, but maybe.
I'm gonna look at a 2% increase.
Maybe the landscaping, just the way people are picking characters is allowing for that. Not really sure actually. Oh,
it happens. I'm also a dog owner. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I mean, across the last 2 weeks, Butcher's actually, if we do a 2-week window, Butcher's down a little bit. like a little bit, but Butcher has been in a healthily above a 50% win rate for a while now. So, and if we look at the 1 week and we're seeing an uptick, I'm gonna point to the all heroes are free and kind of bring it all the way back to what we talked about at the beginning of the show with if you're smurfing, you have access to all the heroes now. But
yes, certainly Genji going up might be that style as well.
Yeah. But like overall, but Butcher's just been doing well for like a good like month to 2 months now. He
kind of goes back to the whole like when I was saying Zul's is like pretty easy, right? I hate to use that word, but you charge in, you start smacking things, and like if you successfully charge in and smack things, then you get stronger and you can charge and smack even harder, right? And that just scales on itself. It's a way to blow out games of Heroes of the Storm, which is something you don't see as much anymore, just because of the design of the game. But like Butcher, if he gets enough meat stacks, will 2-tap Jaina. Like that can happen. So just having that, is probably keeping that win rate up and keeping him kind of healthy and successful.
Yeah. What about you personally, McIntyre? Has there been anything since the last balance update that has adjusted your play? Any different heroes you're playing as a result of the balance changes?
I don't really think so. I mean, the only character that I like play all the time, and it's so crazy to think this because he's been in the game forever, is Muradin. And I had a video that I actually have uploaded on the Hero Search channel, which is the floaty pants Muradin. And I've been playing the build forever. But yeah, he's like my go-to. I love one-shotting people. And it's just something about the character, like the stacking Perfect Storm at level 1, just having that ring always every time I land my Q, and then knowing that when I finish my quest, then I can maybe get 2 rings. I can hit 2 people with my Bolt of Storm. Like, it's really fun, and I've had probably the most fun playing him out of any character currently in the game. So I'll play him anywhere. I'll play melee assassin. I'll play solo lane, Muradin. It doesn't really matter.
So is it safe to say that Muradin is your Sammy? Are you pulling people into secret Muradin discords to teach them the ways?
I mean, I think the only thing that I need to teach people as Muradin is that in most cases, people tend to think that you need to thunderclap before you Stormbolt. But I would argue that people juke usually when you thunderclap. So showing your face and then Stormbolting, even if it misses, I think is more effective than the jump thunderclap and Stormbolt. But that's a personal opinion, and I know I get a lot of criticism for that. But
I mean, the idea being that you land a slow and then frame up, but you're saying that they're more likely to hit their Volt then and be out of range or in a more dodgeable position.
Exactly. Whereas if you jump in and just sling it, sure, you might miss 50% of the time, but if it does hit, it's like now you get your thunderclap, you can go after them, you can maybe even, I do take Haymaker. Yes, you can Haymaker afterwards as well. And then that gets even better as the floaty pants begin at level 16 with Dwarf Launch. So
yeah, and that's my big question for the playstyle. It feels like almost hover tank Sergeant Hammer. There is this long haul for Muradins to just get to 16 before now they're killing machines. Is there anything along the way they should be paying attention to or thinking about to have an impact?
I think the other really important talent that a lot of Muradins aren't taking is Brawnbeard at 13. That's another huge power spike that's like healing stag's great and sustaining is awesome. And like, Avatar is really good too. You can even go Avatar with the build, but like give him the axe to 7 and then Bronzebeard at 13. Like now you're getting to the point where you can really duel and fight.
Okay.
Well, as I have someone doing some work outside, I could continue.
Yeah.
Rewind's really good too, guys. By the way, just let you know.
just popping off over at McIntyre's house today.
It's all good. It's all good. We're happy to have you here, and thank you for sharing all your knowledge on the show today.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think we're basically approaching the end of the show here too. So thank you very much for bringing so much. Like I'm not joking. I'm really excited to go and try the ETC you talked about today.
It is busted. Like, message me back after you play it, because I just feel like it's sleeper OP, that build is.
Gotcha. Well, I've got your Discord now, and that's so now it's a problem. You're giving me something I'm interested in, so I'm gonna be like, hey man, I'm going into a game. You should take a look at this. So, well, awesome. Well, before we wrap, McIntyre, I mean, you're doing so much stuff for Heroes of the Storm. If folks don't already know where to find you, where should they go to keep up to date with all of the content you're putting out?
So my Twitch is McIntyre. You can follow me on Twitter at McIntyre Hots, where I'm retweeting a lot of the stuff for Heroes Hearth. Heroes Hearth CCL is a big one. We have now 2 Giant Slayer is a new thing that we're obviously breaching into as well. Some new games, new worlds to explore. But yeah, Heroes Hearth CCL, that's where a lot of the content for Heroes is coming out. And that's kind of, again, I'm behind a lot of all of it. So I've slowed down a lot on my own personal YouTube, and mostly the content that's coming out for me is going to be found on the Heroes Hearth YouTube channel.
Awesome. Well, everyone go and give him a follow. It's McIntyre Hots on Twitter for the audio-only listeners, in case you're not sure how to spell McIntyre. So go check it out. And that's going to bring us to the end here. We're probably going to have a decent amount of time for emails and questions next week if there isn't some sort of big patch or tease or anything. So keep them coming, everybody. itncast@gmail.com is where you can write in and be a part of the show. If you're a patron, you can skip the inbox entirely. Just drop us a message in the patron Discord. We can even talk to you there in real time if we're hanging out in the Discord at that moment. Speaking of our patrons, big thanks to our producers, Declan H, Cheesy Bob, Chris K, Mike C, and Eric C. Thank you for supporting us. And if you are out there right now thinking, man, I like the show, I want to throw them $1 or $2, head on over to patreon.com/ITM. We really appreciate the support. It helps a ton. Been thinking about it a lot lately, especially since things are kind of nutty right now. So really, really appreciating that support. If you want to keep up with the show, follow it on Twitter at ITNcast. And Kyle, man, you do other things as well. It's not just ITN for you. If people want to catch you playing Heroes of the Storm, maybe role playing, where can people find you?
You can find me over at twitch.tv/Kyle Fergusson, where I stream my Heroes of the Storm play, mostly tank bruiser and a little bit of support when called upon it. But you should also check out DM Gives Inspiration, the 5th edition Learn to Play Dungeons and Dragons show. And this next week is going to be all about playing online. For reasons. We're all taking our games online.
It's on brand for the world. The world's brand at the moment. I'm Garrett Art on Twitter. You can follow me there, GARRETT. There's 2 R's, 2 T's in Garrett. I trust you know how to spell art. Everything else is over at amove.tv. Angry Chicken just put out a 2-hour episode last night covering all the new stuff coming to Hearthstone. Regis Kilbin joined us as a guest. It was an absolute blast. We just had this kind of nice organic conversation because they released literally all the cards. They announced all the cards in a week, which is just, that's too much. You can't do a card by card review when they drop 130 plus cards in a week. So we just kind of took a big organic look at all of the different archetypes. It looks like they're coming with a new expansion. I had a really good time on it. I can't recommend it enough. So go get the latest episode of The Angry Chicken wherever you find your podcasts. Everything else, that included, at amove.tv. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. It's going to do it for this week's episode of Into the Nexus. Until next time, good luck and have fun.
Take care.
Bye.